Hey, what's up everyone, and welcome to Sly Spy Gaming. The Saints Row developers dropped the patch notes for the Saints Row Sunshine Springs update, and it is incredibly gigantic. I cannot stress how big this first update is, and I was definitely not prepared. In this video, we'll be breaking down all of the new features that released alongside the new map expansion and DLC. I will not be touching on the billions of fixes that were implemented in this video, but let me know if you are curious in the comments below, and I can create a separate video breaking those down for you. Without further ado, let's dive into what was all implemented in the new Saints Row Sunshine Springs update. So the first significant change that this update brings is the new district of Sunshine Springs. It's a large resort area that's an oasis pretty much in this dry landscape along Route 22 in the southwest of Santo Illeso. Sunshine Springs comes with new activities, new stores, and obviously an entirely new area to explore. So if you're a completionist or just want to explore everything in the game, you'll be happy to know that there is way more to discover in Sunshine Springs. The next big change in this update is the general combat changes that they've implemented. The developers have listened to the feedback from players about the amount of damage needed to down enemies, and they agreed. So, the combatant health has been dramatically reduced, which when combined with several aim and engagement improvements, increases the pace of combat and reduces the ammo starvation. Additionally, there are several different changes to enemy dodges, since they would sometimes feel unfair. The last significant change is in regard to the time players had to interrupt call-ins for reinforcements. Essentially, it was too short, so the developers adjusted them to be longer on all difficulties. Numerous additional changes and bug fixes are included in this update, making combat feel much more satisfying, and I personally cannot wait to get my hands on it. To break it down a little bit more in depth, here are some of the notable changes in combat. Enemies arriving at combat situations will now arrive in slightly different locations to more frequently avoid collisions. The enemies will no longer wait to engage the player one at a time in combat, and this is one that I always thought was really weird, as you'd be fighting one person and kind of all the others would just be standing around. The enemy hit chance is now temporarily reduced when the player crouches. They have changed the crossbow weapon to use hit scan logic instead of behaving like a projectile weapon. They have slightly improved the sound indicating low ammo. They have improved impact reactions associated with weapons typically viewed as heavy. They've added a visual element to the reticle on the HUD to indicate when a player successfully hits an enemy. They have removed the stand in place and panic order from Pantero's enemies who are on fire. This essentially better aligns them with the logic of using fire in their attacks. They have buffed low-level explosive skills to be more useful and fun throughout the game. They have removed damage immunity on enemy combatants when dodging. They have added fire damage resistance to all Panteros, again kind of going along with that whole fire aspect of their gang. They've added better logic to enemies attempting to make a call in for reinforcements to better keep them in the view of the player, and thus able to be interrupted. This should help keep enemies from calling too often from cover. They've added a logic to better clean up vehicles abandoned by fleeing pedestrians. The weapon signature abilities will now automatically be applied when they are unlocked instead of requiring the player to go to friendly fire locations. They have reduced spread on player weapons and replaced it with more realistic recoil. In theory, this should better reward skill in compensation with reducing recoil. Lastly, they have updated the thump gun charge time and reload time to be more in line with other weapons of the same tier. That essentially wraps up the general combat changes that the developers made, but they have also made some changes to the HUD and UI for combat, which is always a welcome improvement. Here are the changes in this update for the HUD and UI. So they've added visual elements to the HUD and the weapon wheel to indicate the current level of upgrade on a given weapon. They've added text below the weapon wheel to indicate the requirements to complete the equipped weapon challenge. They've added a full screen tutorial to encourage players to utilize the upgrade system. They've added friendly fire weapon store functionality to the weapon stashes in the HQ and apartment. They've recaptured the tutorial video for proximity mines, and they re-enabled depth of field blur in fine aim. They've also made specific combat changes to the atcha activity, which will in turn improve areas outside of the atcha activity as well. So they have added avoidance logic to enemy vehicles arriving at atcha combat encounters. They have added scaling added deceleration to enemy vehicles arriving at atcha combat encounters to keep vehicles from careening out of control, and they have resized atcha location combat areas to keep arriving enemies closer to the player's location. I will now move on to the new features that they have actually added in this new update, which I have kind of covered in my last video, but to go more in depth with that, one of the new features is that they have added a new emote wheel. So to kind of go along with that, they have added some notes to go along with the new features that they will be adding in the new update. So in terms of the emote wheel, they have added a customizable wheel to offer up to 8 emote choices on the fly. As you may know, before you kind of only had 2, which one was a moving emote and the other would typically just be a standing still emote that you would use. They have added a quick bind feature to left and right D-pad to quickly access any 2 emotes from the wheel. And again, I don't know if you will only be able to use those 2, but from what it sounds like, you'll be able to use all 8, and then you'll be able to have these 2 kind of as a quick use type of thing. They've added emote interface to the player customization screens. They've added a new ability to steer certain emotes while slowly moving. They also said some can even be mixed with others. I'm really interested to see how exactly this works, as they don't go into too much detail of how that operates, but I guess we'll see when the update finally drops. They've added new type descriptions to each type of emote while customizing, and this will help players better understand the abilities and limitations of each type. And lastly, they have added 6 new emotes to try out with the new emote wheel. Next, we'll move on to the selfie mode feature that they are going to be adding in the new update. Really, the only note that I saw on this was that the new selfie mode can be found within the camera app, and the players can move the camera in a small 3D space, change the orientation, they can change and modify focal distances, they can toggle different facial expressions for your character to use, and they can even pause mid-emote. Next, they go into the new playlist feature enhancements, and this one I am really curious about because honestly, the way they had playlists set up in this compared to some of the other games really didn't make much sense to me. You couldn't really use it in the car or anything like that. But to go more into detail, they have removed several unnecessary play buttons throughout the interface. They have moved the custom playlist within the menu to be in a more convenient location. They have added shuffle buttons to radio stations within the playlist app as well as the custom station. They've added functionality to the radio station selection wheel to quickly add a radio song to the custom playlist. That sounds really cool because if you are driving, there's a song that you like, you can instantly add it to your custom playlist, which is essentially what you can do with Spotify or something like that. They've added the ability to move tracks within the custom playlist. They have added the custom station to the radio wheel. Now this is huge, and I'm really excited to see that this is the case because now you can listen to all your favorite custom songs. Lastly, they have fixed several small UI inconsistencies with visual formatting. So next we'll go into the missions app enhancement. So they have added an icon to identify next missions in the story. They have added an icon to identify specific DLC missions, which will obviously be playing a part in this new update, as they will be releasing the Heist and the Hazardous missions alongside this update. They have added a completed tab to condense completed missions and challenges. They have reorganized mission order within the app to keep the story and DLC missions at the top. They have added description and XP cash reward information to the mission highlight information. They have added several pieces of information to the challenge submenu on item highlight, which includes the name of the next perk that will be unlocked, the number of challenges needed to unlock the next perk, as well as the icon of the next perk, and a short description of the next perk that the player will be unlocking. They have added visual progress indicators for each challenge's progress via a purple bar behind the challenge name. And lastly, they have cleaned up several minor inconsistencies regarding the scroll bar functionality and the menu option highlight formatting. Next, we go into the new audio features that they have added, with the first being that they've rebalanced several instances of player and NPC voiceover. They have tweaked ambient sound levels. They have bumped footstep Foley levels. They have rebalanced default audio mix configurations and reset the default audio slider positions to reflect the changes. They have edged down the jump air rush sound effect, and they have increased the voice line volume of the HQ Porta Potty collectible. Lastly, we'll go over the general new features that will be implemented in this update, starting with that they've added extensive tech to automatically condense icons on the map when zooming out. In theory, this should increase stability in later levels of progression, as well as make the information easier to see. They have added a hide player health UI option. They have added a hide vehicle health UI option. They have reorganized and unified the pause and main menu to help players better find the options they are looking for. They have added the ability to custom nickname vehicles in the garage. They have added new overcast and cloudy states to the weather system. They have fixed a few outstanding weather-related bugs. They claim that Saints will now gather in small groups in completed districts ready to help out the player, and this was kind of a big one as you completed districts, you didn't really see too much of a change. You just kind of knew it was completed, but with this new feature, it should add more Saints around the area, kind of more visibility and more of a feeling of, oh, I'm driving through a district that I've completed, instead of it's just the same civilians that you see over and over. Next, they have added a new distant vehicle camera via pressing up on the D-pad while driving. Next, they have added a DLC menu to help identify what content is available and what content is already owned. They've added UI indicators for all free and premium DLC content throughout the game. This includes weapons, missions, customization items, etc. And all owned free DLC content will have a plain purple background and menus. For premium DLC content, these will have a purple background and a small blur icon. And then lastly, they have altered several items of speech in the first effing day mission, the morning commute mission, making rent mission, the great train robbery mission, going overboard mission, and the severance package mission. And wow, that is about it for my breakdown of the new features coming in the Sunshine Springs update for Saints Row. All in all, this update looks to be a fantastic addition to the game and brings about a ton of new features that we really weren't expecting. I personally can't wait to see what else the developers have in store for us in the coming months, but let me know in the comments below what your thoughts are on these upcoming features and if you're excited to play it. Also, don't forget to like and subscribe so that you can get the latest and greatest news on your favorite games. As always, thank you for watching, and this is Sly Spy Gaming, signing out.